Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is JJ and I am a writer, an editor, a reader. I work in the publishing industry and I have a lot of knowledge that I would love to share with you about the industry and about how you can break into the industry and what to expect whether you self-publish or whether you're trying for a traditional or a hybrid contract. This is the beginning of a new series that I'm planning to do just about publishing 101. What are the things that you really do need to understand before you jump into this industry? Because there's a lot. If we're honest, there's so much and nobody really teaches it. You just kind of jump in and hope for the best. So today I want to talk about editors. There are a lot of different types of editors. And one of the most common things that we see within the publishing industry, I've worked in the publishing industry for the last 2.5, 3-ish years, depending on how you count freelance work in there. And if you include my work in college, that is even more. Right, so you've written your book, and the very first thing that you're going to hear for most people is, okay, great, when are you going to publish it? And while you could just jump straight from rough draft, which is your very first draft ever, to uploading it to Amazon, or sending it out to email, like to agents via email or editors, the very first thing that you should ask yourself is, if I look back on this in 5 years, am I going to be happy with this? And what I can tell you from talking with many, many writers and from being a writer myself, the answer with that is likely no. The longer you practice, the more words you write, the more books you put together, the more you understand plot and rhythm and how to write a book, the more likely you are to realize that you don't actually know what you're doing when you do the first book. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that you have to like throw it out. It just means that you should be aware of the likelihood of getting published with your very first book that you've ever written ever, right? So as you go into the publishing industry, one of the first things that you can do to make that first draft better is to hire an editor. But there's different types of editors. I've done a video on this before, but one of the very first things that you need to understand is that not all editing is the same, and what your book may need is not what you think you're hiring an editor to do. So without further ado, let's talk about developmental editing. Developmental editing, content editing, similar, mostly the same thing. A developmental editor might go through and do some of the grammatical things that you're expecting. They might adjust things to fit industry standards. However, their job is to make sure that the content of the book flows well, that nobody is going to be confused, and that things make sense. Whether you're doing nonfiction or fiction, it doesn't matter. That is the role of a content editor. It looks different in fiction and nonfiction. How you content or develop edit a memoir or a self-help book is going to look different because of the nature of the book, right? So if I grab one of my favorite books ever for branding yourself, this one is super helpful if you're trying to build a platform. Highly recommend it, which if you've been around here for a while, you know you need a platform. If you're new here, I'm going to tell you now, you should start building your platform. That one's free today. This book is called it's branding yourself, how to use social media to reinvent yourself. And this book, the way that it's laid out and the organization of contents is all dependent on how the author and the content editor decided to put it together. So like when you're looking at this, what are the sections, right? We have welcome to the party, that's section 1. Number 2, how do you fit in the mix? Section 3, blogging, telling your story. Section 4, LinkedIn. Section 5, Twitter. Section 6, Facebook. Section 7, say cheese, sharing photos and videos. Section 8, other social networking tools. Section 9, Googling yourself, finding yourself on search engines. Section 10, bringing it all together, launching your brand. Section 11, measuring success. Section 12, how to network. Hello, my name is. Section 13, public speaking, we promise you won't die. Section 14, getting published, I'm an author. And Section 15, personal branding, using what you've learned to land your dream job. What would happen, for example, if instead of doing it in the order of welcome to the party, we jumped straight into how do you fit in the mix? What example, if you said, okay, welcome to the party, and you jump straight into blogging, LinkedIn, and Twitter, how would that change the impact of the knowledge in here? And then if you go back in and you're like, okay, how do you fit in the mix? The order of information is as important as how that information is presented. In fact, it's a huge aspect of how you present information. And so as you are looking for an editor, the first stage of editing that you should ever do is a content or developmental editor. And that's for nonfiction. Let's talk about fiction. Let's talk about a book that everybody knows really well because they made movies about it. Let's talk about The Hunger Games. What would happen, for example, if Katniss was a very two-dimensional character? What if you didn't care about Katniss at all? What if you didn't feel like you knew her? What if you didn't care about her sister, Prim? And what if you really were rooting for Gale more than you were rooting for anybody else in the series? What if we were following Peeta instead of Katniss? What if that point of view was different? What if we had President Snow as our main point of view character? See how those change the story and change the presentation and change the meaning of everything that Suzanne Collins did in this book? That is the nature of a developmental editor, is to ask those questions and to ask, does this, in this presentation, help the author tell the story they're trying to tell? Does the reader understand what's going on? Like, if we had questions about how or why people were putting additional entries into the drawing for the Hunger Games, those are the sorts of questions that a developmental editor would ask. Have we spent enough time grounded in District 12 so that we know where we're coming from? Because yes, the whole point of the Hunger Games is the games themselves, but do we know where the main character is coming from in order to understand where she's going? That is a huge part of developmental. Somebody who specializes in grammar and layout and line by line, is this the best word choice you could possibly use here, is not going to be able to ask those questions in a way that will help you. Because those people are line editors, copy editors. Again, the names kind of vary. It depends heavily on what you're aiming for. Line editors and copy editors are the people that you really want on your corner when you say, hey, I think that the story is really sound, but I know my grammar needs some help. I know that, for example, I don't know how to use semicolons and I want to. I know that I have a lot of fragments and I don't know how to fix those. I think I'm communicating this. Am I actually communicating this, or do I need to say it differently? Those are the people that are going to be able to help you with those sorts of questions. But you should not be getting notes on character, notes on plot structure, notes on flow, notes on whether the tension is good enough in this scene. You shouldn't be getting those from a copy editor. Those are the sorts of things that a developmental editor should be adjusting, should be fixing, should be paying attention to. And that's why you need both, because they're totally different specialties. Some people are capable of doing both, but most people will have a strength leaning one way or the other, right? And so you need both. The typical flow of a book is that you write it, you send it off to a developmental editor. The developmental editor looks through it, reads through it, makes comments, makes notes, sends it back to you. You make adjustments, you send it back to the editor and you say, hi, did I fix the things that you pointed out? Because you're right, most likely. Or, hey, I really don't think you understood what I was going for here. This is what I was aiming for. How do we adjust to that goal? And then the editor will be able to say, oh, I read that wrong. Okay, because I read that wrong, here's where I got my information that we need to go back and fix. And they'll be able to figure all of that out with you. So you make your edits. Once you both sign off on it, you're like, yes, this is a much better book. This is fantastic. This is what we want. Perfect. You send it off to a copy editor. That copy editor or that line editor is going to help you with word choice, making sure that your words that you're using mean the right things. They'll help you with spelling. They'll help you with grammar. They'll help you with probably organizational items like, are all of the chapters actually numbered correctly? You'd be surprised how often we get 2 chapter 11s in a row because the author forgot what the last chapter they wrote was. I've seen it so many times, maybe not with chapter 11 specifically, but where it's like chapter 11 and then the content is totally different. I've done it myself where I've put the same little filler in between, because as a writer, you can't self-edit as effectively as if you have somebody else looking at it and giving you their thoughts in that way. And so it's super helpful to have additional eyes on your manuscript. At the very least, get a better reader. We'll talk about that in a second. So copy editing, this is the next phase. This is where your grammar is fixed, your spelling is fixed, your syntax is fixed. People are paying attention to if you stayed in the same tense, in the same point of view, everything like that. It's the nitty gritty, super technical. You can look it up in this book. Probably the most recent version of this book is the one that you'll want to be using, but you can look up the answers to everything that you need to do to copy edit by having this book. It's all right there. How you should be spelling state names, how you should be abbreviating, if you need to spell out or like numbers, how do you handle numbers? Do you do 10,000 spelled out or in numerals? This book has all of those answers and is the book that is most commonly used for book publishing. In fact, like this is the standard for book publishing. This one is an old copy. It's the 14th edition. I think they're on 17th or 18th as of 2022. I don't remember for sure. They changed minor things here and there, so having an old one is not the end of the world, but you can probably get a version of this at your library. They probably have it in a reference section. Next up, you send your book off to a typesetter. Yep. A typesetter, somebody who is going to lay out your book so that it looks like the finished product of a book. You're not going to print it yet, but you're going to send it to them. And then you're going to take that file and send that file off to a proofreader. What is a proofreader? What do they do? A proofreader, as the name suggests, is somebody who reads the proof copy of your book. They are specifically looking for places where the text might have gotten cut off, where there's misspellings or commas were suddenly added in, really random added letters. They are looking to make sure that the book that you're creating is absolutely as clean as it can be. Clean as in grammatical errors, spelling mistakes, character names are proper, formatting looks good, it's pleasing to the eye. There's nothing that's like, wow, that margin should be a little bit bigger, or maybe we should increase the spacing, or we should increase the font size a little bit. There's nothing like that. That's what they're looking for, to make sure that the book is as consistent across the board and as correct across the board as possible. They inevitably will find something. They will send it back to you. You will send it back to the typesetter. The typesetter will put it in properly, send it back to you. You send it back to them. Whole process again until they say, yep, we're good to go. And that file, that is the file that you can send to the presses. So that is the file that that a publishing house, and a good publishing house will be doing all of these steps for you. That is what you are hiring them to do. They have good editors, they have good resources, they know what they're doing, they've done it a lot, they know what works in the industry, they know what will help your book sell. Everybody is working together in that way. That's what a good publishing house will do. On the other hand, though, if you are choosing to self-publish, if you're choosing to publish your book through Amazon or Ingram or wherever you're choosing to upload your file, that proofread file that is typeset properly, that is the file that you are going to upload into Amazon to print. Which is why you want that to be as good as you can possibly make it. If you're working with a publishing house, you might hear of this thing called an ARC, an advanced reader copy or an advanced review copy. The terminology varies, but it's always called an ARC. Let me see if I have one of those. I should have one on my shelf somewhere. I almost always do. This is an ARC. This copy, see that little button on it? It says, uncorrected proof, not for sale. This copy of this book is the version of this book that the publishing house put out into the world before they finished the proofreading stages, so that readers could read it and review it, and they could start getting the word out about this book that they have high hopes for, so that they could get reviews and get social buzz going for this book. That is the point of an ARC. You don't sell these. What you do with them afterward is a little bit tricky. This one happens to have a bunch of title information on the back where like it has the ISBN numbers, where it's going to be filed, paperback, how many pages it has, the prices, for publicity, who do you contact, ordering information, who do you contact, on sale, etc. Like when it's coming out, etc. This one came out February 12, 2019. So you do that with the version of the book that is not fully approved, right? And usually there's a little line in there that says, hey, if you're going to quote from this copy, please check with the publisher first, so that you can make sure that you have an accurate version that is actually the version that went to press. So if you're going, you can do that if you're self-publishing your book. You can take that version while you're still finishing up the proofreading, print a couple copies, or create a PDF and use that for promotional purposes. You can't sell them, but you can give them away, and it can help increase buzz. And then, of course, you release your book, and inevitably, even after the developmental editor, the copy editor, the proofreader, and you, even after all of them, a reader is bound to find something. There's always a typo somewhere, because there comes a point with every book where every person's set of eyes gets tired of looking at it and reads what they assume to be there, not what is actually present. So do yourself a favor, get as many different fresh sets of eyes as you can on the book. And that, the ARC copy, that's a great time to introduce beta readers into the rhythm. You can do this either before you hire a developmental editor and they can give you feedback like a developmental editor would, not to the same extent because they don't have the same training, but they could still give feedback on like, wow, I really love this character, or wow, that was like a really intense scene, I think you should maybe tone it back. And they can give you that sort of feedback. How you find them is up to you. I often reach out to my friends because I trust my friends as writers. I know that they know what makes a good book, and they have good feedback for me in that way, professional feedback for me in that way. But you can do that in a lot of different ways. People have their various different methods. So those are the different types of editors. Those are the different stages of editing that a book will go through. And that's why a publishing house is super helpful, because they have all of those people that they trust that will be a good set. Like they'll be helpful, they'll be professional, they'll know what they're doing. When you're doing everything with freelancers or with, if you're doing it all yourself, that backlist of proven titles is a really important element, because you can see for sure, like, wow, this person does know what they're doing. Wow, I really like how this book turned out. Or wow, this book is selling really well. Clearly this editor does know what they're supposed to be doing with that. So as you're going into publishing, understanding what types of editors there are is huge. It's vital. You have to know what you're doing with that one, because otherwise you'll do what a lot of authors do, which is hire a proofreader or a copy editor instead of a developmental editor. And then you'll reach out to a publishing house or an agent and say, hi, this is an edited copy. You probably don't need to run it through edits, and the fact of the matter is, no, they will still have to run it through edits because they don't know what kind of editing you did or how good the editor was, and that editor might have introduced different errors into the final draft by not following the Chicago Manual of Style. They might have been following the AP style, which is the style that newspapers use. It's not the same. The rules are different because the formats are different. So make sure that if you do hire an editor, make sure that they're editing to a proper standard for book publishing. And be aware that if you do hire an editor and then you pursue traditional publishing, you'll have to do the process all over again. It might be a slower, or it might be a faster, easier process because you have already addressed a lot of the major areas of concern, but you will still have to do the whole process over again. There's no shortcut. But if you're trying to produce a really good self-published book, hiring the right types of editors and the right people who know what they're doing is vital to your success. And that will help people and help the entire self-publishing industry have a better reputation. Make those books worth more, raise the value, the market value of everything that you produce because you're producing a higher quality end product. So this is Publishing 101. Welcome to, that was a quick overview look of a lot of the things that happen in a publishing industry. What different editors do, what type of editor you should hire, depending on where you're at in the journey. And of course, too, like you don't have to go all the way to typeset and proofread if you're going to approach agents. You just developmental and copy editing. If you're going to do that, you don't have to either. If you are like confident that your book is fantastic, by all means, save your money and just query. And if it doesn't work, then invest the money and then go back to querying. And if that still doesn't work, then you have a fully edited manuscript that you can self-publish if you want to. So there's a lot of different variations and different options ahead of you. There's totally different paths of publication, but all of them to produce an end quality good product, they all involve these 3 stages of editing. And sometimes you'll find too that some smaller houses will merge content and / developmental editing with copy / line editing. And then they'll also merge proofreading with copy editing, but not line editing. Line editing goes line by line to like make sure that everything is as good as it can possibly be. Copy editing is looking for grammatical things. And that's kind of the role of a proofreader anyway. So in theory, in that scenario, the developmental editor is working first on plot, characters, organization, second on grammar, layout, whatever, to make sure that it's as clean as possible, so that when it goes to the proofreader has less that they have to do and they can produce a better copy at the end. So there's different ways of doing it, but all of those roles do need to be filled in as you're doing this in order to produce a good product at the end of the day. That was a lot. Again, this is Publishing 101. Welcome to an introductory look at the different parts of the publishing process and the different parts of what makes a book good. I'm really looking forward to continuing this series. I have a lot more that I want to talk about, including cover design, when to do layout, different industry standards for layouts, different rhythms and sequences that will help you get published, as well as a breakdown of, okay, so you are self-editing. What questions do you ask with your developmental edits? What questions do you ask with your copy edits? What resources do you need to have? When do you start building a platform? Right now. I cannot emphasize that enough. Start now. Platform building takes so long. Even if you know what you're doing, it takes a long time to build an effective community around you. So start now. Or at the very least, start thinking about it now. Have an idea of what you want to do. That's a tangent. I'll save that for another video. All that to say, thank you so much for joining me. I'm super excited about jumping into this with you, and I cannot wait to see where we go together. Until next time, I'll see you then.